Thank you very much. Now we know who's going to have to speak. Please help me as we welcome Mrs. Graca Machel. I think that's it, right? That's about it. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Oprah Winfrey. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'd like. Thank you very much. Let me hand over. Thank you very much. Let me hand over to our host for the day. Ausia Lunghore, I respect her a lot. Ausredi, over to you.
How many of you believe women deserve dignity? How many of you believe that women's rights are human rights? From Sarki Bartman to Rosa Parks, we have marked our presence on this planet. Women have amplified their voices when there was such a high price to pay. Do you agree? Women have continued to fight not just for their liberty, but for the freedom of others. Do you agree? There is so much work to be done globally. The statistics here at home are jarring. Just recently, the Minister of Police revealed that 40% of women in South Africa are likely to be raped in their lifetime. Are we prepared to live with that? The minister also said 41% of rapes that are perpetrated in South Africa are against children. Do we want to live in that kind of country? Do we want to live in that kind of world where the wage gap continues to widen between men and women? Do we want to live in a world where for every 100 boys that are in primary school in sub-Saharan Africa, only 91 girls are in school? Is that what we want to bequeath to the next generation? So you will then join me in saying it is time for Is'thunzi Sabafazi. This moment is now. It's a global quest. It's a global journey. We will collaborate. We will share ideas. We will galvanize each other into action so that we all bring our energy, our expertise, our experiences, and our hearts in creating a world that is loving, that is enabling, that is welcoming for women and children, and that tells them that they are worthy citizens. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome Professor Njabulo Ndebele, who's the chairman of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, to welcome you to this auspicious occasion. Prof? We didn't allow any men backstage, so that's why he's sitting there.
Thank you very much, Reddy. Honored guests and friends and ladies and gentlemen, I bring you greetings from the Nelson Mandela Foundation. We live in a violent society. I'm sure you'll all agree. This violence comes through our actions in all kinds of criminality. It also comes through our words in public demagoguery and in private humiliations in our homes. Against this context, you will agree with me that it is particularly unacceptable that in our country, 1 in 3 children are subjected to violence by a parent or a caregiver, and that 1 in 5 are sexually abused by the time they are 18 years old, and that more women and children in our country die from criminal violence than do so in certain war zones elsewhere in the world. And if women and children are so fundamentally unsafe in South Africa, we are then as a nation unable to visualize clearly the future that we invoke so much as a people. We forget that women and children in so many ways are fundamental to that future. And in our forgetfulness, we embed social behavior and we affirm untenable pasts and a painful present and a blindness towards that future. It is such embedded realities that got Nelson Mandela to reflect in a remarkable concession years after leaving prison that he had been a male chauvinist at the time he was captured, and that it had taken a long process of reflection first to understand this and then to begin working against it. In that regard, the foundation that he established works through numerous dialogues designed to increase our reflective capacity as a people. But reflection vitally needs to go with action. The Foundation's commitment to promoting social justice has seen us over the last several years insisting on gender as a cross-cutting theme in all the work that we do. So today's event is not a once-off for us. It is part of a continuing series of interventions designed to identify more effective strategies for dismantling legacies of oppressive systems in their various forms. A particular form of odious consciousness at this time in our country is patriarchy as an oppressive apparatus of power that has been resilient in its insidiousness. Today, the Nelson Mandela Foundation and the Graca Machel Trust have created this space where we are all gathered to listen to remarkable women and speakers who will share their experiences, reflections, and actions they have taken to restore and reshape the sense of justice, compassion, and care in the consciousness and imaginations of millions of men and women who currently, particularly men, who currently reproduce the systemic violence that has been deployed in our country over 150 years of oppressive rule. Many reproduce that violence even in their declared acts of combating it. We have extraordinary program with speakers who will inspire us. But to our guest speaker today, Ms. Winfrey, you have come all the way to be with us today among many other of your visits to your other country. We admire you and love you greatly for all you do for South Africa, and welcome you back once more. But speakers need audiences, and you, our audience, have come in large numbers to listen, learn, and engage. May we all go away from this event more aware, more compassionate, more caring, and inspired with inspired imaginations to make ours the country we have always dreamed of, and for a better world out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Njabulo Ndebele. And I think it is important to remind our audience that this is a collaborative effort between the Nelson Mandela Foundation, the Graca Machel Trust, and the Kuhluga movement. That's why we are here today. And as you were speaking, I couldn't help but reflect on my favorite book that you wrote, The Cry of Winnie Mandela. It's not even about Winnie Mandela. It is, but it isn't, in that Winnie Mandela is represented as the symbol of the experiences of women in apartheid South Africa. Those who left their homes and paid dearly, those who lost their sons and daughters as they went to foreign lands to fight for the democracy that we enjoy today. That is the story of all women. Thank you. Nelson Mandela said that as long as women are bound by poverty, then human rights will lack substance. And that's what we're here to do, to exchange ideas, to find ways of intervening so that we make a difference in our societies. I just rattled off some statistics that are enough to depress you. But when we are depressed, we will disengage and we will not enjoy any victories. Ms. Oprah Winfrey says, despite your circumstances, despite the lack of resources, doing your best at this moment, doing your best at this moment prepares you for the next moment. So, let's do our best at this moment with what we have. We cannot wait to hear from you. Ms. Oprah Winfrey.
Okay, Winnie, I have to tell you, I am here because Graca Machel called me several weeks ago and said, will you come and help us celebrate Madiba's centennial anniversary birthday? And I said, well, you know, I'm going to be there for Global Citizen. I mean, she goes, oh, no. We want to do something even more special. We want to honor him, celebrate him, and let the people know that his life mattered and continues to have meaning. And so I was just thinking about last night, this is my 36th visit to South Africa. I have been here 36 times, and I keep coming back because I love this country, and I love its people. And I left campus, I left the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy campus in Henley today. I come at least once a year to teach a class called Life 101. It's everything I wish somebody had told me before I graduated. So I come to teach the matrics, but I left the matrics today to be here with you to celebrate the birth of opportunity, the birth of hope, the birth of freedom, the birth of Nelson Mandela. I loved him so, and he was my favorite mentor because he was a man who could have sought revenge, but instead he sought reconciliation. He was a man who could have and had every right to hate his oppressors, but instead he hated their policies. And he was a man who could have actually crushed his opponents with his power, but instead he chose to defeat them without ever dishonoring them. He was a man who could have been filled with bitterness, but instead of fueling himself with rage for the years that were taken from him and the pain that he endured in prison for 27 years, as most of us would have been filled with rage and anger and fury, he filled himself with gratitude for the lessons that he learned and for the friendships that he forged, even in prison. He was a man, because of those 27 years, was not allowed to raise his children, but instead he raised a nation. And our world, and South Africa in particular, is the better for it. I have to tell you that I met Madiba when he came to the United States, and it was like coming home. And I have to say that I had decided that I was going to do something for South Africa. The year I was building my home in Los Angeles, and anybody who's ever built a home or built a kitchen or remodeled a bathroom, when they tell you it's going to be done, it's never done. So I'd been told that my house was going to be done, finished by Christmas 2002. And of course it wasn't. And I started to think about what is the ideal thing to do for Christmas since I can't be in the house and have the Christmas that I wanted. And I started thinking about when I was growing up poor with my mother in a town called Milwaukee, and my mother was on welfare, and there was my mother, my half-brother and sister and I, and my mother called me into her room on Christmas Eve to tell me that there would be no Christmas this year. And I was like 12 years old, and I thought, what? What happened to Santa Claus? I kind of was getting on to that Santa Claus thing, but you know, you get more presents if you believe. So my mother said, there will be no Santa Claus this year. I can't afford it. And my first reaction was shame. My first reaction was embarrassment, because I thought, what will my story be? What will I be able to say to all the other kids who talk about what they got for Christmas and I got nothing for Christmas? And I was embarrassed about that because it confirmed what I had been feeling. Because you know when you're poor, you don't exactly know you're poor until somebody tells you you're poor. And then you see other people and you go, well, I really am poor. I kind of had a feeling I was poor. Now I really am poor. Santa Claus is not coming to our house. So I was resigned that I would have to go back to school and have no story. And that night around midnight, 3 nuns showed up at our home. And the nuns brought us, my brother, my sister, and myself, toys. I had wanted a Barbie doll, but I got a Tammy doll, and I was very happy to have that Tammy doll. But the real gift that the nuns gave us was allowing me to see for myself that we were not forgotten. And I never forgot it. I never forgot it. So this Christmas 2002, I decided, since I can't get in my own house and have the Christmas that I want, what would be the ideal Christmas? I thought of Madiba, I thought of South Africa, and I made a decision to come to South Africa and do something I call Christmas kindness. I brought 50 people from the United States. I hired another 50 people here in South Africa, and we took caravans from one province to another. Thousands and thousands and thousands of toys and books and clothes to give to children. I did that even though there were many people who said, it's not sustainable. Nobody wants to do anything unless it's sustainable. It's not sustainable. Why are you buying toys for children? It's not sustainable. Why are you buying them books? It's not sustainable. I said, but the memory will be sustained. And so, I make these plans to come to South Africa in 2002, and Nelson Mandela hears about the plans and he says, you must stay at my home. He says, Graca and I want you to stay at our home. I said, like in the house? Like in the same place where you sleep? He says, yes, our home in Kunu can be your home base. So I said to Stedman, my life partner, oh my God, Nelson Mandela has invited us to stay at his house. What am I gonna do? I said, I don't know. It's 10 days and nights, Stedman. It's 10 days and nights. Who stays at anybody's house for 10 days and nights? I said, I don't have 10 days and nights worth of conversation. I don't know what I can say. I can get through one day, maybe one night. I don't have 10. And Stedman said, it's Nelson Mandela. You don't have to talk. Why don't you try listening? Such good advice, Stedman. So every day and every night, I had 10, it is the glory, the most amazing, fantastical thing that has ever happened to me of all the things that have happened in my life. I got 10 days and nights and 29 meals with Nelson Mandela and Graca Machel. Thank you very much. And every night, I'd sit at dinner, he would wait at the table, I'd sit on his right-hand side, and he would talk about life and his years in prison and his experiences. I wanted to take notes. I wanted to sit at dinner with a notepad, but I didn't. But what I learned in those 10 days and nights and 29 meals was that his goodness, his integrity, his soul could not be contained in a 7 by 9 foot cell. And I am here today to remind us that even now, his spirit lives. Nelson Mandela passed 5 years ago, and sometimes it feels like it was forever ago, and sometimes it feels like it just happened a few weeks ago. But sitting at his funeral, I could sense and feel that I didn't think he had passed away from us. Instead, it felt like he was passing through us. Because we are Mandela's children, and we are his legacy, and his legacy speaks to us. Each time we choose unity over division, his legacy speaks to us each time we decide that we are going to fight for equality over domination and love over hate. He was the son of Chief Henry Mandela of the Madiba clan of the Xhosa-speaking Timbu people. And he rose to become not only the leader of this great nation, but a citizen of the world. And he, I believe, the spirit of him abides with every man, every woman who listens with humility. Everyone who says yes to breaking down a barrier and not to putting up a wall. Who educates rather than retaliates. He is with us every single time somebody, somewhere casts a vote for democracy and casts a vote for freedom. He lives. So I was nervous at first going to Kunu, and after a while, after about 6 meals, I became comfortable with Madiba, and so comfortable that we could sit in silence. We could sit in silence and share the paper, sit in the living room, talking about the problems that ravaged the nation then and now. He was most concerned always about poverty and its devastation to people's lives. He was most concerned about how poverty bred violence, how poverty brought about a lack of health care and a proper education. He was concerned then, as I am concerned now, about a generation of young people who are not being empowered with the quality of education that they need and that they deserve to fulfill their natural-born intelligence and potential. Young people who are discouraged and turn to alcohol and drugs and crime or worse. And I would say it's hard sometimes not to be discouraged, and so blessed easy to become disillusioned, to let apathy set in. Madiba himself sometimes felt discouraged. He was, after all, human. But he also felt the collective heartbeat of his people. He knew that mountains could be moved, the gridlock could be eradicated, if we were all to join forces and work together in service for something greater than ourselves. That is what he believed, and it is what I know to be true. One of my favorite quotes is from another powerful leader, Dr. Martin Luther King, who once said, "Not everybody can be famous." And if he were alive today, he would say, no matter how many selfies you take. Not everybody can be famous, but everybody can be great, because greatness is determined by service. And so, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever your job, whatever your calling, whatever defines your life, if you use the paradigm of service, how can I be used for a cause that is greater than myself? How can I be used by the power that has created all beings for something bigger than me? That is the question. And asking that question, I understood that when Nelson Mandela got discouraged, he didn't despair. When he got discouraged, he got busy. He never permitted the darkness to extinguish his light. And I am here today to offer a prayer that we all continue to live in his light, to connect to his vision and strive for it. That light never shined brighter for me than in 2007, when I opened the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls, in support of Madiba's mission to alleviate poverty by educating girls. So this is how it came about. Madiba and I were just sitting in the living room. We were chit-chatting, as we do. And he passed me the paper, and there was a story about a young boy who had lost his grandmother, lost his home, and would not be able to be educated unless somebody was going to support this boy. And we started talking about what is the answer to eradicating poverty. And I said, the only answer I knew was education. He said, yes. And I said, well, one day I would actually like to build a school, and it would be a school for girls, because I believe that women are going to save South Africa. We love the men, but we believe the women are the ones to do it. I said that to Madiba. He said, yes. And he said, you want to build a school? Now, I was thinking, sometime, yeah, I do want to build a school. And he got up that moment, called the Minister of Education, who was Kara Osmal, and asked Kara Osmal to come to the house because Oprah wants to build a school. I was thinking, not today, but. So I built a school in 2007. I built a school to give girls who look like me, who came from backgrounds like me, who didn't have the means, but had the brain power and the will to succeed. I wanted to give those girls a chance. And I will say that the experience of watching these daughters of South Africa find their voice and find their grace has made me think long and hard about the universe that our young leaders are graduating into today. Some of my girls are here today. Girls who graduated from my Leadership Academy have gone all over the world. Some graduated from universities in the United States. 2 have graduated from Oxford in London. Some come from UJ, from NMMU, from WITS, from UCT, Pretoria, Stellenbosch, and Rhodes. Girls, stand up from the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy. And we just got our first doctor, graduated from Stellenbosch. Boitumela Tepi. Boitumela, stand up. Turn around. I have right now 191 girls in college. 20 of them in the United States. That is the answer to the question of how can I serve? So here's my hope, not just for my girls, but for South Africans and human beings everywhere. I hope that we are able to continue to create a culture that recognizes the responsibility that we have to one another. Here's the truth. Each one is supposed to teach one. When you learn, you teach. When you get, you give. So when I first realized that I had enough money to take care of myself, the first thing I did was take care of my parents, take care of my family. And then I started to think about, who else can I serve? I want to serve people who are like me, who come from circumstances like me. I want to give them a chance to better themselves. And so the dream for this academy had been birthing itself within me for years. Because from the time I started to make just enough money to make sure that my bills were paid, I started to ask the question, who else can I serve? Who else can I serve? So it doesn't have to be a big thing. I know everybody can't build a school. Everybody can't go out and make legendary promises, but you can take care of the person who's closest to you. You can offer help, you can offer assistance, you can ask the question, how can I be used for something greater than myself? And in doing that, you align with Madiba's vision, both compassionate and practical. You see, because he understood that he knew that when one of us is wounded, all of us bleed. He knew that if one of us is lacking, all of us are somehow affected. And he had tremendous hope for humanity, but make no mistake, it was an active hope. Hope without a plan is meaningless. So I opened the Leadership Academy because it was imperative for me to begin to move beyond just hoping for a better future for South African girls and women. We all need to roll up our sleeves wherever you are, whatever you can do, and begin to build a new future. And we need to do it and pay forward everything that you have been given. We must bond our hope to action and let those actions align with our values. I am, as you may have heard, a big fan of Michelle Obama's book. Her memoir, Becoming, I recommend it for everybody. And the first thing I loved about it was its title, because, at least to me, the word becoming suggests that we all are forever evolving, constantly learning how to give more of ourselves to each other, but first filling your own cup. And I want to say this to the women. For a long time, I was afraid when people would say to me, oh, she's so full of herself. Oh, she thinks she's so much, she's so full of herself. I would hide behind that and try to say, oh, no, I'm not full of myself, I'm not full of myself. Until I recognized that unless you're full, you don't have enough to give to anybody else. You gotta fill your own cup. You gotta take care of yourself. And there is no taking care of yourself unless you take care of your spiritual self first. In order to be whole, you've got to take care of your spiritual, emotional self. So fill your own cup so that when people say you're full of yourself, you say, yeah, baby, I'm so full, my cup's running over. Amen. My cup is running over. And when you fill your cup to running over, you then have enough to give to other people. But if you don't fill your own cup, other people will drain you dry. They will exhaust you. They will tire you. They will wear you out. And you will never have enough energy to do what you are actually created to do. To fill yourself, make yourself whole, then offer that gift to the world. So we are always becoming, always being able to stretch beyond this moment, doing your best in this moment that leads to the best in the next moment, to become people who create a sense of unity and cultivate inclusion. Madiba hoped that we were becoming a world of tolerance, that we were becoming a world of diversity, of diverse conversations and thinking and skin colors and sexual orientations and talents and dreams. He believed in our future. So I want to say a word to the young dreamers of this nation. Mandela said that a winner is a dreamer who never gives up. So my offering to you today, young people, is never give up. Because it is your fresh perspectives that are going to bring about unprecedented innovation for this country. We need you. You are in the majority, but I realize that the statistics are abysmal, that you're still the most vulnerable in the labor market, with more than 1 in every 3 of you out of work. Do not give up. Find a way. And I want you to know that your day will come, it's coming, it's on its way. because of you. And I want you to know that I applaud your resilience. The thing that's so remarkable about every single girl that comes to my school is all of the trials and all of the traumas they've been through. Most girls have experienced 6 major traumas by the time they get to my school. And in spite of that, they still rise. And so I say to all the young people, you too can rise because you are capable and you are brimming with the wisdom of all who came before you. One of my favorite inspirations is from a poem that Maya Angelou wrote called To Our Grandmothers. And in that poem, she has a line that says, I come as one, but I stand as 10,000. I come as one, but I stand as 10,000. And I am telling you that every time I walk into a boardroom and I'm the only woman in the boardroom or the only person of color within a 50-kilometer radius, there's not even a kind of brown person in the room. I walk into the room and I whisper to myself, I come as one, but I stand as 10,000. Who are your 10,000? Who are your 10,000? I come and I stand. I stand with my mother and my grandmother and her grandmother and her grandfather and her grandmother and her grandfather before them. I stand as 10,000, remembering the stories of my ancestors. It's important to know the stories from which you've come and be guided by those stories and their transformative power on your life. Take the lessons from their lives. Take their sacrifice. Take their courage. Take their hope. Take their strength. Take their guts. Take their resilience. Take their warrior spirit and take their crowns and put it on your head and wear it. And recognize the ways, large and small, in which our ancestors are woven into our own story. Tell your story. Tell your story. One of the things I've learned about all of the girls who come to my school and come from such trauma, when the girls first started coming to the school, they had such shame about their stories. And now we have a policy at our school. We are a trauma-informed school that knows and recognizes there's power in the story, that the story can liberate you, that everything that's ever happened to you, no matter how devastating, no matter how sorrowful, no matter how challenging, there is not one thing that happened to you that did not also happen for you. And when you get that, everything that's ever happened has happened to build your strength. And that strength, times strength, times strength, times strength equals power. Equals power. So when you've been through so many trials and so many tribulations, what it does to you, if you allow yourself to open up to the story that's come before you, that's helped to make you, what happens is it gives you power. So, I think it's only fitting that I close today with letting Madiba have the last word. It was difficult to know which words should I choose. Do I end with his wish for, you may, he says, may your choices reflect your hopes and not your fears? Do I leave you with his insight that poverty is not an accident? Do I leave you with understanding that, like slavery and apartheid, poverty is man-made and can be removed by the actions of human beings? Or the notion that if people can be taught to hate, they can also be taught to love? He used to say, and this is my favorite, I never lose. I either win or I learn. So let's all take some comfort in that. Never lose, either win or learn. I say there's no such thing as failure. Failure is just a mistake trying to move you in a better direction. And if you understand that you never really lose, you always have the opportunity to learn from every mistake, we all win. And I would say, if I know Madiba, and I am so grateful that, and forever grateful that I did, he would want you to be inspired by these words of his. He said, sometimes it falls upon a generation to be great. You can be that great generation. Let your greatness blossom. And to that I say amen and happy birthday, Madiba!
Another round of applause for Oprah Winfrey. We will take what we want to take from your message. And one day, when the world gets noisy and our heads are spinning, we will remember, because those words found fertile ground in each and every heart today. I'm sure of that. And thank you, Oprah, for reminding us of our ancestors. Because lately, there has been contestation about the legacy of Nelson Mandela. And historical figures cannot escape scrutiny. We take that for granted. However, there are so many of us who are not in doubt about what he meant to us, what he did for us, and what he continues to mean for us. And so, in this world that is full of turmoil and extremism, we need to rage against forgetting. Because if we forget, we do it again, the very thing that sets humanity backwards. One of your heroes and people that you admire, and you quoted her extensively and richly today, Maya Angelou, says prejudice is a burden that confuses the past. It confuses the past, it threatens the future, and it renders the present inaccessible. Prejudice is a burden that confuses the past, threatens the future, and renders the present inaccessible. Let's remember that as we live in a South Africa today where there are some xenophobic killings just around the corner in Rustenburg. We must rage against forgetting, because then we will repeat the prejudice. Thank you so very much. I want to say that backstage, we all watched Oprah being so generous with her time, taking pictures with every single person who came to her. But I observed that as soon as her girls came through, she shut the door and gave them herself, her time, uninterrupted. And sometimes that's what we can do for future generations, make ourselves accessible and give them their time. Congratulations for all that you've achieved. And giving of time reminds me, Ms. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, who's the Executive Director. Yes, we claim our titles. Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, the former Deputy President of South Africa. in a just and fair world, would have been the president of South Africa. And there would have been no recall once or twice. There would have been none. Again, on the theme of being accessible and making time, we've heard hashtag #MeToo. Now, UN Women has come up with an initiative, hashtag #HearMeToo. Hear Me Too. And it says that every life, every woman, every child has a story, deserves to be heard. They may not make headlines, but their lives have value. And that is the theme that we'll explore in our panel discussion with Ms. Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka and Josina Machel. Right now, I'd like to call Mama to say a few words.
Hello, South Africa. At this point, my time is simply to be dedicated to Oprah. I'll come back again to give my tribute to Madiba later. I made a decision to call Oprah to come and celebrate 100 years of Madiba with us. As she clearly explained, there are very few people in the world who have spent 10 days, 10 nights, 29 meals with Nelson Mandela. I knew that these celebrations will be totally incomplete if Oprah wouldn't grace us with her presence, with her voice, with her power. So when I called her, say, you must come home, and you have to be here to make sure that your father will feel that the celebrations are complete. Was I right? I also made the decision that these celebrations wouldn't be complete without bringing the girl child, the adolescent girl, the young woman, the woman of my generation, to the centrality of these 100 years. And there was nobody else fitted to exactly bring all the blessings you can think of to remind us that the girl child, the adolescent girl, the young woman, the adult woman, they do matter. And we needed this powerful voice to touch our minds and our hearts. Whatever she has said, I'm sure it will be remembered for the next 100 years. And this exactly was the intention of this event. It's not an event. It is an empowering moment for us to walk day after day the next 100 years. Some of us, we have much less time here, but other younger ones, including those who are going to be born, they will have to add day after day their contribution until we get to that dawn in which a girl child, an adolescent girl, a young woman, a woman will be accepted, respected, valued in her own dignity. And I could not have thought of a better voice exact to put this at the centrality of who we are, of who we are. Men and women, all of us, to remember, yes, we are a wounded society, because it is true. We know all the atrocities which are being committed against children and women, but it's upon us, as she said quite rightly, women will heal this nation. And she said, and I'm adding, women will heal this continent. And women will heal the world, actually. There is no better voice to plant in our minds, in our hearts, to build the conviction and the determination to make it everybody's mission to say, I am man or woman because you are a man or a woman. That's where the space we have to meet together. Oprah, I've never seen anyone who have made a decision not only to build a school for girls. It's a beautiful school, absolutely complete of whatever you can imagine. But it's not the school which is the beauty of it. The beauty of it is from the onset, Oprah takes time to spend, to give classes, to listen to each one of the girls, to listen particularly to those who face certain challenges, and sometimes even calling the parents to come to help to support her girls. She told us that she has been here 41 times, and those 41 times are dedicated to every single girl who has passed through the academy. Oprah. And that for me, it's not philanthropy. It's exactly to give yourself. To give yourself to each one of those you felt that more than your small world, there's a bigger one out there. And of course we know each one of the girls you have touched, you have molded their character. They have taken part of your indomitable spirit. And those girls, they are very special. They are not going to allow anyone to abuse them. And what I want to say with this, is, we as South Africa, we as Africa, we as the world, we will never be able to thank you enough. We'll never be able to thank you for this. Because, as I said, I have never known someone who does the way she does it. And you are, for that reason, so special for the lessons of life, the lessons of love, the lessons of beginning by the small things, but to make the big things happen. Now I want to say, when I come back to talk of Madiba, it's precisely because I was privileged to witness how the two of you connected at a higher level. I was there, those 29 meals, yes, I made sure that they happened. And I was sitting there and I was watching. That's why I thought the best of gifts, which we, the Nelson Mandela Foundation, the Graca Machel Trust, the Kuhluka movement, the best of gift we can offer to South Africa, but to the whole movement of celebrations of 100 years of Madiba, it was exactly to bring Oprah to be at the centrality of these celebrations. I want to finish with this. There have been hundreds of initiatives across the globe to celebrate this centenary. But this is the moment where you and Madiba came as human. I wanted this celebration to be human. It's not about only the icon. It's not only about the exceptional leadership we can take from him. It's about the human who touched Oprah the way she was touched, the way Oprah decided to make her own journey with these thousands of girls along these years. That's human. And I want us to know that there's no one who cannot say, I don't have that gift. Any of us as human, in our own way, as small it might be, we can always do it. And this is the lesson I wanted that we should take from these celebrations. No one can say, it's not my business. No one can say, it's up to so-and-so to do it. You are human. You have immense gifts inside you. Learn from Oprah Winfrey. Learn from Madiba. And that is the conversation we are going to have. I'll take only 5 minutes at the end of what it means to celebrate this legacy. But you know, Oprah, you made me so happy. And you made me so complete. For me, the best of celebrations has happened. Guess what? And she's leaving us. She's not going to stay up to the end. I hope you'll stay. Huh? She is leaving because she has a graduation with her girls. It's not, you see what I mean? Please register this way of being, this way of doing things. That's what it means, actually, to be Oprah, to be Madiba, and that's what it means that you and I, we also can be. Be blessed. Be hugely blessed. And you know, because you are, that Millions of people in the world are taking these lessons from you. As you continue your journey, we will always be inspired. And I just want now to say, I thank you so, so very much. Because when I called, I was thinking, perhaps you should say, I'm too busy, I can't do it. But no, she accepted. Again, she humbled herself to come and spend these moments with us. Be blessed. Be blessed. Have a long, long, long life of service. But more importantly, feel fulfilled. Feel so happy because you make happy so many other people. You deserve to be extremely happy. This is what we wish you. And finally, as you go and you continue, that smile, which you know so well, that deep voice, which you also know so well, will continue to bless you. Because yes, you made Madiba one of your ancestors. Thank you.
May I ask Professor Njabulo Ndebele to come on stage and present Oprah with a very special gift together with you, Mama, and then thereafter you can escort Miss Winfrey. There we go. Which one's right?
Yes.
To present Madiba's prison letters.
Thank you. You each. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Of course, no better than Madiba's word himself.
You were wonderful. I'm going to take your out. And I'm just going to take it.
Okay, you can't beat that. Are you glad you came this afternoon? I just want to remind you that the gift that was presented to Oprah is worth an investment. It's called the Prison Letters of Nelson Mandela. And every time that you think you know so much about him, his life, his family, the sacrifices that those around him, his family, Winnie Mandela and their children, the sacrifices are here, the poignant moments, the longing, because sometimes we do represent Nelson Mandela as this cuddly grandpa, and perhaps he was all of that, but he was a man of flesh and blood, and you see all his reflections, the losses, the tears, but also the resilience, the tenacity, and the hope for a better tomorrow. So this is what's going to happen. We will have a panel discussion with Josina Machel, who has founded the Kuhluga movement. She'll be joined in conversation by the Executive Director of UN Women, Dr. Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka. So why is this conversation important? Why do we want to hear what they have to say? We want to learn what is happening globally in the fight against inequality. How do we measure progress in efforts to create a safe and equitable world for women and children? When we have the hashtags and the programs that are launched by the United Nations, I'm thinking about last year at the UN General Assembly, Every Woman, Every Child, a project that is very close to the Secretary General of the United Nations. So, are these mere platitudes? Do we just tick the box and say we have done it? How do we measure? Because when you look at the statistics, it's easy to think we are not making progress, but we know that we are. And then Josina Machel, we know she's a formidable young woman with an entrepreneurial spirit, but something was birthed inside her a couple of years ago. And it was out of a very painful personal experience where she was assaulted by her partner. Okay, let's let them have their moment. I know when to keep quiet, contrary to popular belief. There we go. So, Josina was just a woman being a trailblazer, living her life, raising her children, being a great daughter. She was assaulted by her partner. And I remember in an interview that I did with you, Josina, shortly thereafter, she says she was just stunned. She was stunned. She couldn't react. She couldn't believe this had just happened to her. And I have to mention that because often when women get abused, the first thing that is said is, why didn't she scream? Why didn't she sound the alarm? But it was such a huge and frightening moment that she froze and didn't know what to do. She lost sight of her one eye, and she could have just rolled over and taken part in a self-pity party. And we deserve those from time to time. But she lifted herself up. She got up, formed partnerships, collaborations, told her story so that it can empower others. And so we neatly come to our discussion today. Hear me too. Restoring women's dignity. Is'thunzi Sabafazi. Okay, every time I touch gadgets and microphones, they break. So if you trust me, do you have a microphone for our conversation? Very quickly, thank you very much. I'm wearing high heels and I can walk faster than you. Let's go, thank you. This one is for you, and Josina and I will share. So my first question, Josina, you are the daughter of Graca Machel, the daughter of Samora Machel, the daughter of Dr. Nelson Mandela. These kind of things don't happen to women like yourself, or do they? I want to know, what was your mother's first reaction? What did she say to you when you said, I have been beaten?
Thank you. Good afternoon. I have to say that there were two nightmares after what happened to me. I didn't know how I was going to tell my mother, and I didn't know how I was going to tell my children. I was about to go into a life-defining operation, and my mother had arrived a few hours before. And I said, you know that I had an injury, because at the time she didn't know. We had saved until she got there. And I held her hand and I said, that is not the truth. I was beaten. And my mom closed her eyes and looked at me and said, what? And I said, I was beaten. And she said, beaten? Beaten? She couldn't, my mom could not hear the word and actually compenetrate herself of what that meant. And she went into silence. She hugged me and she went into silence. This is a woman who had raised me throughout my life to know that if someone beats you, you are out of there. If someone raises a hand against you, it is not love, but it is disrespect, the utmost disrespect. And she had raised me for 39 years, and I had never had an occasion where I went to speak to her about it. It had never happened. So to look at me at that time, to hear what had happened, and to see the damage, because she had seen her daughter with an eye completely open and with the prospect of never ever seeing again, was something that broke her. And I am not really sure whether she is healed from it. But that's the experience that millions of mothers in this continent, millions of women in this continent have on a daily basis, when they have to look at their children, at the girls, at their children having been raped, their bodies having been disfigured. And in many cases, many of the women are called only to recognize the body parts of their children. These are women like me, whose future and whose life is never the same. Women like me, survivors of violence, whose lives on a daily basis is never the same. We do not face the sun the same way. We do not feel safety the same way. We engage with fear in a completely different manner. And we battle with issues of trust, basic trust, with any human being from that moment onwards. And that is why I normally argue that we as a country and as a world need to start adopting survivor-based approaches to take care and recognize the rights, the needs, and the wishes of survivors of violence.
We'll come back to your activism in just a moment. But Dr. Mlambo Ngcuka, again, globally, this is a scourge. And the freedoms that women lose, that children lose as a result of all sorts of violence visited upon them. Josina lost the independence, the freedom to drive, right? She lost the freedom to just get up and go wherever she wanted to go. We're not even talking about the emotional scars. And so when you launch an initiative like Hear Me Too, and I went on your website as UN Women, it's not famous women, it's not women who've achieved this award and that award. It's ordinary stories that you are going out of your way to find, to give them a platform, confirming that there's a universality to our experience. Why Hear Me Too?
Thank you very much, Reddy. I have to say you're in your element today. And we love it. And thanks, Mama, for everything that you are to us. Thanks to our Oprah in her absence, also for sharing her life and her experiences with Tata the way she did. But also a shout out to all of you in this room. Yeah. Malibongwe!
You, yes!
Malibongwe! Malibongwe! Yeah, Tata ufuna kubenji. He must feel that we are standing up, that we are not defeated. We are fighting on. The hashtag Hear Me Too is a continuation of #MeToo. What #MeToo provided for us as the world is an opportunity to use the lives of women whose lives are interesting to a lot of people, to call perpetrators to book, and in many cases, we have been able to see that these perpetrators have paid a price. It was an opportunity also for many women who felt they were alone to hear somebody say, "Me too, I believe you, and what you are telling is true." It was also an opportunity to actually show that there are institutions and instruments that we can use to take on people that otherwise seem powerful. There was a time when the word consent was not a legal term. Women could be abused, and there wasn't a way in which they could report and expect to get justice. Because of the struggles that many of the people who are in this room fought, you actually created a narrative that made consent to be something that you are required to give. And if you have not given, your perpetrator can be taken to book. And that is why Me Too was able to succeed. It stood on the shoulders of the work that you have done. But it was important for us to take that experience and make it something that will also support the many women that the typical sort of high-profile media would not be looking at, because their stories need to be heard. These are the women we want law enforcement to stand by and stand with. These are the children in schools that are abused by their teachers. These are the workers who may be abused by supervisors. These are the students in colleges. This is what this hashtag is all about. Hear Me Too.
Is it? So sometimes it feels, I emphasize feel because what one perceives may not be the reality. Sometimes it feels as if we are having these conversations amongst ourselves as like-minded people, that we all agree that violence against women and children is abhorrent, that we all agree that women must be paid equally. And I think was it you and Women that did research that demonstrated how a dollar travels, or the rand travels. If you give a man a rand, what he spends it on. This is empirical evidence, by the way. It's not women just getting together to bash you. This is a fact. That same amount of money, let me use the rand because that's the currency I identify with, travels further in a sense that it reaches more people who need it. It is used to buy that which is needed for the survival of families and children. So getting back to my point, that sometimes it feels as if we are having these conversations amongst ourselves. Are we making progress in those very corners where this message needs to resonate the most and where the change needs to be seen?
I have to say, women's activists of my time, we actually invested a lot on talking to ourselves and not enough to the people we are trying to win over. And this is highly regrettable. We have now learned the importance of casting the nets wider. That is why ourselves as UN Women, we work a lot with men. Because we recognize that the men have to be responsible for creating the change that they will also enjoy in society. So our campaign, He for She, is about mobilizing men to stand up and be counted and be active in changing the status quo. In Josina's case, in the best world, it should have been men in that society, the friends of the partners. This is what I'm sending out to men, who must come out and say, Jita, imbi lento yenzile. This is unacceptable. we are the ones that will make sure that justice is served. We need men to be the ones who say, I will not marry a child. Men must end child marriage. Men must be the ones who say, I will just not beat up a woman. Because if men decide I will not beat up a woman, case closed. So the good men who are already walking the talk need to be louder. We absolutely need their voices, because sometimes we are the usual suspects and we're not always able to get through. We actually need to find other voices and other messengers to take the message forward. One of the calls we have made as UN Women, because of the pandemic of violence against women, and to a limited extent also we're seeing it also affecting boys, is a moment in the world of truth where the stories of the women are told in a structured manner of accountability, so that there is something and a mechanism to follow up on the perpetrators and the rights of women violated, and transformation, so that we address the way in which we have to address the normalization of crimes against women in society, similar to what we did with the Truth and Transformation and Reconciliation in South Africa.
So you use the word normalization. I'm coming to you in just a moment, Josina, but I know that there's the world's media in this room today, and I'm a journalist, but I do believe that there's a very important message that the media ought to reflect on when it covers stories of gender-based violence and inequality. So a grown man will make some confession, and this is not hypothetical, it's stuff that has happened, including with Hollywood stars, the best in the world, where you would choose as an editor, a sub-editor, a journalist, to put on the front page a headline that says, this person was caught in a sex act. With a minor, it's not a sex act. You can't have a sex act with a minor. Do you understand? It's not a sex act, and the media must stop reporting it as such. What are you sanitizing? Or this woman lays a charge after a scuffle. What is a scuffle? In a contestation of people who are not equal in every way. Oh, my favorite that I saw right here in South Africa, a particular Kwaito star, moors or claps. You know, this kind of, like it's lighthearted, we're joking. We are busy with comedy rather than a life and death situation. So my colleagues in the media, perhaps in our newsrooms, we need to bring people to train us, to report on diversity, to report with sensitivity, and to report truthfully. So, Josina, tell us about your movement. What is your message to the world? And is that a way of you fighting back against what happened to you?
Reddy, when this horror happened to me, you would have thought that I would have had access to the best of treatment, both in the police, in the court system, and in the hospitals. The reality is that I experienced, like many women, my documents disappearing in hospital. My documents disappeared in the police. I had to go and report for the second time because the police said I had not reported. The process until we got to court took something like 18 months because the files kept on disappearing in the court system. So as I went up and down, and I went through a process of second victimization where doctors actually say, well, we don't have your information here. Perhaps walk us through the door and show us in which bed you were lying for all those 4 hours. In those 4 hours, I had no access to my phone. I was walking barefoot. I was completely bleeding and asking people on the floor, whoever was in the hospital, I would go on my knees and say, for goodness sake, I'm the daughter of Graca Machel. I'm the daughter of Samora Machel. Perhaps you know someone that knows a relative or a friend. Please ask them, inform the family that I'm here. And that is why I only got proper assistance 4 hours later. And by then, the eye had bled perhaps most of what it could. What then happens is that when I decide to start the court case, and I was faced with all these challenges, my thoughts were, what happens to Maria? What happens to Tolofelo? Because at least I had the blessing and the support of someone who could go to the hospital twice a day with me. Sometimes it was 3 times a week until I managed to build a case. And so in that process, I sat with those that went through this trauma, because this kind of trauma is not about a woman. It destructs the fabric of a family. And those close to me helped me think, and we said, if this happens to you, what happens to others? And that is how we thought about the Kuhluka movement. We want it is a small contribution in ensuring that the horrors that I experience and that other women experience do not continue happening. We need to ensure that women have services available to them in places where they can go. They can have services that are reliable, that are appropriate, that they don't have to face the loss of documents, because what that does is you fall through the gap. So we have taken our programs and decided that we need to return the dignity to women in their most urgent time, when they are most desperate, when they are completely broken. And we bring items, for example, through what we call the dignity pack. In that moment when you are desperate, something just comes and says, I am here. I believe you. I know what you're saying. So we're doing that. We also then we create circles of support so that women during the process know where to go. They can share their stories. They can access services that are appropriate and that can start giving them or allowing the process of healing. And ultimately, of course, it's also to build centers of healing in which you don't have to go once and twice. You get in one and you have access to doctors, to lawyers, you have access to police, and of course to psychosocial services aside from the other ones that come. That is the dream, and that is what we're working towards, to ensure that what happens to one does not continue happening to millions. Our challenge is actually to challenge everybody here to engender a community that is caring. A community that is caring, ready, means that when we hear a woman screaming, we stand up and we go find out what's happening. A caring community means that you take perpetrators to count. We don't think, oh, well, this is my son. Maybe we can talk about this amongst families. No, gender-based violence and abuse and rape is a crime, and it needs to be treated like such. Engendering a community that is caring means that our social workers are equipped to deal with these issues, and not to say, well, where were you? Why were you dressed like that? That is also what happens when we go and we report to the police. We are belittled. We do not find understanding in the face of those that are supposed to protect us. Many times they ask, oh, well, what did you say to him? You see, And even sometimes as family, we say, oh, my child, maybe you didn't speak to him properly, or the food. No, it's not about that. It's about all of us looking at our women and our boys with the same level of equality and treating them as such. Normally I say that we are in a state of war. The numbers of women that are dying on a daily basis are like the same number of people that die in wars. The number of women that turn victims and survivors of violence on a daily basis is like the same that you've got wounded soldiers. So why is it that we don't respond in that manner?
And of course, I mean, the statistics speaks for themselves. Again, there's a lot of debate, but the last one I checked, maybe somebody knows a different one, was that the conviction rate was about 14%. That's the one that I read. And let's not forget, of course, the LGBTIQ community as well, that continues to face the same discrimination, the added burdens of having to fight every single day to have a right to their being and the right to their identity. Dr. Mlamungula, Josina talked about the system, bureaucracy, the officialdom, as it were, which is also some sort of weapon. And I'm a bit ambivalent about this, because when I'm on a public platform and I encourage women or survivors of sexual violence to speak out, in the way that we've seen grown men now who are speaking out against the abuse that they experience at the hands of Catholic priests from across the oceans. They are speaking about it and confronting some of the perpetrators. Sometimes I wonder whether it is fair to ask survivors to speak out, because you speak out to what end? It is tedious to fight a system, to deal with police officers, health officials, the community, churches, families that are just not getting it. So when we invite survivors to speak out, have we created a safe landing for them? Have we created some form of succor and nourishment where they can feel validated? And I suppose Hear Me Too is also about that. But I want to go to systems. And in the countries in which you have a presence, in the countries in which you work, how difficult is it to inject a level of efficiency? I know you feel very passionately about technology as well. I understand your PhD was around technology, and I know Anne also feels very strongly about how we use technology to teach, to empower, and so on. So I just want to find out, in the communities where you work and it is business as usual, how do you plant that seed that will unlock efficiency and a quicker turnaround time?
Thanks, Reddy. Let me start by answering the issue of systems and governments, because the United Nations is an intergovernmental system. It's important to us that governments take responsibility for protecting, for preventing, and for prosecuting successfully cases of violence against women. Not to make a crime of violence against women to be defined as anything less than if the victim was a man. Killing a woman is murder, not a crime of passion. There is no passion when you kill someone. When a woman is dead, when a man kills a man, there is, or for that matter, when a woman kills a man, there is nothing about the passion. The law takes its course and you suffer the consequences. So it is important to get the laws of all our countries to be appropriate and to respond in a manner they are supposed to respond. So every year, as UN Women around the world, we at least help to change about 70 laws in different countries. And that pace is not even fast enough. We actually need to be moving much faster. We have a plan that by 2021, we should have reached 60 countries that by then should have made sure that all laws in their statutes that discriminate against women would have been dealt with effectively and successfully. That is from land rights, violence against women, economic representation, family law, because there's just a list of laws in every country that discriminate against women. And many of the laws also in many countries are laws that legislate women's bodies. The women's body is the most legislated entity. No one legislates men's bodies. And it is in many cases men who drive those laws that legislate about women's bodies against the interests of women. So we are working very hard systemically around the world to make sure that we root out those laws. South Africa, fortunately, does not have many of that, but implementation is the problem in South Africa. Implementation is our biggest problem. But also let me say that we also, as Josina's story illustrates, are working with the police around the world in order to make sure that from the police academy, by the time you pass as someone who's training to be a law enforcer, you actually know that there are specific crimes, femicide that are, such as femicide, that are against women. My daughter-in-law recently, who graduated from law school about 10 years ago, told me that, do you know that, Mama, at law school, I did not know that there were crimes that were specifically crimes that were against women. I didn't know anything about violence against women because we just were never taught about it. That is actually quite serious. It says a lot about our jurisprudence. That also has to change because our laws are perpetrator-centric. So we are also working to make sure that in a systemic way, we change the way laws are made, understood, and implemented. There are some encouraging practices that are emerging, but as I'm saying, not fast enough because the fact that right now about 1 billion women in the world live with some form of violence. Africa has about 1.2 billion people, and about 1 billion people in the world, women in the world live with some, that's a lot of people. It's a pandemic. If it was any other disease, everyone in the world will be looking for a cure. The fact that there isn't the sense of urgency that is required means that our norms have created a status quo that makes this normal, acceptable, and this is where we need everybody, men, women, religious leaders, celebrities, media, everybody to change this culture. And we need leaders to speak up. Because what we noticed as a best practice, where leaders stand up and lead from the front of this issue, change happens. We don't have enough leaders who are leading from the front on this.
Yeah, and then there's that added burden that some of the perpetrators are the leaders themselves, so that's kind of awkward, you know. But again, worth reflecting that, 23% of global decision makers are women, and that's where the picture is wrong. The more women we have represented, whether it's on the stock exchange, institutions like the United Nations, Parliament, and so on, hopefully that will create, not necessarily, but it is indeed a start. We are wrapping up our conversation so that we can hear from Mama Graca Machel, reminding us of why we are here today, reflecting on Nelson Mandela's legacy, but also locating the struggles of women within that theme. So, Josina, going forward, what do you hope for? What would you like to see happening? I want you to write a book, by the way, because it travels across many, borders. It will come. Thank you. She's publicly committed. But just reflecting on your journey in the last couple of years, what you've learned, the people that you interact with, what are your aspirations and where would you like to see your activism and it changing the world?
That's a difficult question. Out of my experience, I think what I learned the most is that the experience of womanhood is universal. The experience of pain is universal. But the possibility of healing and regenerating is possible. Where will that come from? That comes from everybody in this room and everybody watching today and saying, no more. I will not, in the next years, hear someone being abused, hear of someone who has been or has abused, who is disrespecting, and who does not take the dignity of human life into consideration. I will not stand by that person. It means, as a society, being almost the policeman to ourselves, saying in our community we do not tolerate violence. We do not tolerate the non-acceptable. That will be the dream. But ensuring that all of us decide that this is a crime against humanity, we have a possibility going beyond what we know our own means. But we can say, in order to leave this world a better place for our children, for our grandchildren, we need to stop this. We need to stop killing ourselves and thinking that, well, things will change or someone will change it for us.
And closing comments from you, Dr. Phumzile Mlambo. I don't even know the question that I'm going to ask you because you are all over in every corner of the world, but your last message on this particular theme as we close this afternoon.
Well, firstly, I just think it's important that we thank the many women that made it possible for us to raise these issues with the force with which you are raising them now. I want to thank the women who have given birth to movements such as Total Shutdown, because there is something to be said about the informal power of people standing in the streets and not actually signing up to be a member of anything. That is very important because it complements the formal power, which sometimes move very slowly. As someone who have worked in institutions and bureaucracy, I need the total shutdowns on this world for my work to happen, because they actually give a sense of agency. So women's movement and movement building, critical element of us moving forward. We also need to continue to hold our governments accountable. Out of the summits that happened here at home, there are very concrete recommendations that we need to rally around and implement and support the implementation of these recommendations, including making sure that the people that we pay with our tax, who are the law enforcement, actually work for us, because it is their job to protect society and to make society and women safe from these kinds of abuses. So we need targeted way of intervening. We make our expertise available as UN Women, and we are trying to collaborate as much as we can with the different institutions in our society that are responsible. Thirdly, men. Guys, you can do this. You totally can do this. Eddie, I'm looking at you, my baby. You can do this in your wheelchair and everywhere. It is unacceptable that women and people of sexual orientation that you choose to disapprove of, and it's not your business to regulate other people's sexuality, are also protected. So those would be my comments. Women's movement, holding governments accountable and supporting governments to be accountable and to implement, and mobilizing men to take responsibility. We are waiting for the men's movement to emerge and to take responsibility for making the world better.
And of course, often you get people asking, which movement can I join? Which movement can... You don't, it's great if you want to do that, but you don't have to. You can be the change in your corner. I see a whole lot of people on social media actively rebuking Tanzania for its clamp down on the gay community. And that is a form of activism. And others saying, I've just cancelled my holiday. We can have a debate another day about the economic impact of that kind of behavior on women and children. That's a debate for another day. But it does mean that there's a principled position that so many are taking. And then I do want to close by sharing, I was at a talk yesterday and one of the young men came to me and said, hey, you feminists, you're always angry. You're always angry. And so my immediate instinct was to get into combat with him. But self-mastery and being attuned to the bigger picture. And the bigger picture was, what do I want to achieve out of this encounter with this young man at that IT company? So I counted in my mind to 10, calm down, we don't have to fight, there doesn't have to be blood on the floor. And I said, well, let me choose this and make it a teachable moment. And that's what I choose to do, because we want partners, we're not adversaries. Is there an opportunity to teach, to awaken someone to something that they were not aware of? So I said to him, there's a lot to be angry about. There is a lot to be angry about. And it would help if we were angry together at the things that make feminists angry. And if we're angry together, and the anger births activism, the anger says, if you are an uncle, a cousin, a father, and you see this kind of behavior that later on multiplies into physical violence, femicide, sexual violence, you call it out in that little corner. You say, that's not how you talk about gay people. That's not how you talk about women. That's not how you resolve conflict. So teachable moments, everybody. And that is the end of our conversation. We go with our hearts full of determinism, full of optimism, and determined to restore Is'thunzi Sabafazi. Thank you very much. You've been a great audience, but wait. This is the last time I'm coming on stage. Mama, you didn't finish.
And we will never finish. I'm mindful that this session has gone too long. I'm also mindful that we have so much to take home, each one of us. And I decided then to put aside what I had prepared as my last reflections. I want to thank Madiba for continuing to be that space where many of us, if not all, we still feel we are connected. His life and his legacy, it is still that glue which in moments of truth we feel we can come together, we can feel we are identified with one another, we are connected, but more importantly, we have many missions to take forward. These celebrations have mobilized literally millions of people across the globe. With modest, you will say and acknowledge that there will be very few people who have that power of touching all the corners of the globe, of touching people from all the kind of diversity you can feel, you can think of, to bring them together and to feel they belong and that they are connected to one another. I think this is the gift which Madiba continues to be to all of us. And it is simply right, I think, to continue to take his face, his voice, his journey as our own voices, our own journeys. That is the meaning of celebrating that beautiful spark which exists in each one of us, where you feel your sense of worth, the sense of living a life which is worth living. It is when, as a human being, you can touch another human being and you feel that change which make us exactly human. I learned these lessons on a daily basis on the way he was very attentive and not leaving some details to escape. To our big issue here, I want to say this is not for us to think as a centenary. All of us here, we have ways and means in which from now on, we are not going to continue to do business as usual. And we are going to take personal responsibility. Any one of us, man or woman, you have a mother, you have a sister, you have a child, boy and girl, you have a cousin, you have friends, you will have people you are connected on a daily basis, even at the workplace. All of us, we should never accept that we are going to live in this unacceptable way of hurting, maiming, sometimes emotionally, and those things which you never see, but those who are survivors, they carry for the rest of their lives. I want us also to be humble and to remember that there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of those who simply were silenced. They became statistics. And we talk of them that how many women died, how many women, etc. They have no name, they have no face. They are simply statistics. We have to reject this. Any human being has a value. Any human being has the right to be remembered. Every human being has a right to be valued. Our society have to reject this way of dealing with survivors in one way, but those who succumbed to violence, particularly this kind of violence, as the statistics we forget about. And we are here, each one of us, to make the commitment. Yes, we'll carry the names, you know them. Please write down. Let's have a space where we write the names of every single person we know that he succumbed in the hands of a partner or of an uncle or whatever it is. But if we write the names, and we have to find a place where they are honored, they are recognized, they are never forgotten. Because that's what is going to build in our consciousness to reject the unacceptable. Otherwise, so I want us to take a commitment as we leave, to take a personal commitment. You know, or you are close to a family which has gone through this. The Nelson Mandela Foundation, I didn't consult them. The Nelson Mandela Foundation, Graca Machel Trust, Kutluka, we have to make it part of our work as well, to identify, to record, and to find a way of honoring those who succumb to gender violence. And also to make sure that none of the survivors is going to walk the rest of her life alone, with her wounds, with her pain. We have to be, and that was the issue about caring societies, which the theme of this session is all about. Caring society is to care about 1, 2, 3, 20,000 million of people, but one by one, not being statistics. This is the commitment I want to ask you, each one of you, to take, which means, in other terms, this has no end. It has to continue until we change our own consciousness. We change the consciousness of those who are close to us. And we change the consciousness of the whole of our societies to be really human, loving, caring, protective, and we make our boys and girls to be of the same value to us in our minds and in our hearts and in our practice. God bless you and thank you very much.
Thank you, Ma, for sharing your wisdom. We are going to hear from Mr. Sello Hatang, the CEO of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, just last words about this afternoon, just to give us a vote of thanks quickly. And this is really the last time I'm on stage, reminding you of Nelson Mandela's words. We must realize that the time is always ripe to do right. Thank you very much. Dr. Sello.
Thank you very much. I know you do want to go home. Some of you have been here since 10 o'clock in the morning. So I want to give a shout out to the person that we don't celebrate enough, Machel. She already painted a picture for you how this came about. I want to add a word that I didn't have to even raise my voice to say, please, let's be your partner. She chose us to be your partner. So for always thinking of us as a partner for these kind of events, Mam Graca Machel, we are forever grateful. To Josina Machel and your Kutluka movement, we're forever grateful for your story because it's through you that we see through what we need to do differently. I want to evoke a name that you'd all know, Lebo Ramafoko, Auslebo, who reminds us that patriarchy, toxic masculinity, will never go away for as long as men and women don't join hands. And she emphasized that women also play a big role in terms of rejecting all this patriarchy and toxic masculinity. Let me also just note my Oprah Winfrey's words about, and it goes back to what Mom just said. When we remember our history, we see how many women are erased from the history books, their contributions reduced to a footnote. I would, however, like to use this opportunity to note that in the centenary of Me Albertina Sisulu, in the year that we lost Me Winnie Mandela, there's a project underway to find the marchers of the 1956 Women's March. So if you know those who were involved with the march, let's collectively build this important archive in order not to forget. Let's sustain the memory. But I also want to go back to Mama Machel, that may we remember that May Sophie Dubrain, May Helen Joseph, the Kuzwayos, and the 20,000 other women who were involved, that each had names. So today, I take up the challenge that Mam Graca Machel just gave us, and want to remind us of Nonki Smos from Kronstadt, an LGBTIQ activist who was murdered and set on fire. I want us to remember Captain Rasuche, and as we remember her, ask ourselves the question that Mayor Oprah Winfrey said we should ask ourselves: what will your story be? Did you remember her? Lerato Moloi, a 27-year-old Sowetan who was murdered for her sexual orientation. And Josina Machel just reminded us that, in fact, these issues don't know color, race, and even your status. You can be a Machel, a Mandela, you will still go through these kind of things. Yudi Simelane, in 2008, a Banyana player who was also murdered. Susan Rode, murdered at Spear Wine Estate by her husband. Riva Steenkamp lives forever with us, but from this very institution, from this UJ campus, we must remember that name that we tend to forget, Palesa Madiba. She could have been a graduate today had she not been killed and buried in someone's backyard. When I called Mam Winnie Mandela, Madikizela Mandela, and one day when we found out about her death and we had visited her family, she decided that her cause, her death, was her own. So we needed to then do more to do that. As we close, I want to evoke Madiba, who says, for every woman and girl violently attacked, we reduce our humanity. For every woman forced into unprotected sex because men demand this, we destroy dignity and pride. Every woman who has to tell her life for sex, who has to sell her life for sex, we condemn to a lifetime in prison. For every moment we remain silent, we conspire against our women. For every woman infected by HIV, we destroy a nation. He further said, we must be honest and open about the power relations between men and women in our society, and we must help build a more enabling and supportive environment that puts the role of women center stage in this struggle. Each one of us, sister and brother, mother and father, teacher and student, priest and parishioner, manager and worker, president and prime ministers, must add our voice to this call for action that Mam Mlambo Nguga called us to do today. Let me thank our very able, very, very talented, someone that I love to bits. Ntade Tlabi will forgive me, I do. Ausridi, thank you very much for what you did today for us. May Oprah Winfrey in her absence, Josina Machel, thank you very much for always just reminding us it's too close to home. Someone that whenever you meet her in New York, it doesn't matter. Halala, my son, my mom, Me Pumzile Mlambo. Thank you very much. Our partners, the Graca Machel Trust, Kutluka movement, may we support Kutluka with everything we have so that they grow from bound to bound from today. And to also thank Samsung South Africa, UJ for being our host, the High Commission of Canada, Hans Seidel Foundation, Audi South Africa, SAA, Vodacom, and of course, these things wouldn't have been possible had the NMF team not worked hard to make this happen. The GMT team, Graca Machel Trust team, and the Kutluka team made it possible. So thanks to each one of you. I want to also remind you that this event, all these things, Mom, were put together by two small black companies. One is Black Motion, and the other one is Lucky Number 8. AA2 Security and Logistics, our photographers here, Cube Design, the SABC, and of course, our sign language interpreters. You'll agree with me that they looked very believable, unlike that guy. I want to take you back. Mam Lambonuga just said technology is also very powerful. I was sitting here, Me Esther Mahlangu couldn't join us, but she sent 4 of her gorgeous Bomme Baba Limmo. So can you please stand up and be acknowledged? The design that you see here with the Ndebele theme that's here, it's Mom Esther's work. And the ladies, obviously. But Mom, Machel, I want to tell you something. I was sitting there and Mema Sango, who was sitting right next to me, she asks for my pen. So she takes out her notebook and she said, "What's the hashtag again?" So I said, what did you want? She said, "What's the hashtag again?" So I said, "Hear me too." She wrote hashtag hear me too. The power of technology has touched the oldies too. I'd like to again thank you for coming through and thank the SAPS who made us safe today, who are sitting right at the back, JMPD for having made everything, and then finish off by saying on the 6th of December, we will be hosting Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. We will be hosting her as part of the 5th anniversary of Madiba's passing and his centenary. We thank you very much.